All right, so in this video, I wanted to go over my top 5 money-making methods in New World. This will mostly revolve around playing the market, but a few of them are still related to the market, but not entirely attached to the market, you could say. So firstly, the first money-making tip that I have is music sheets. Now, I've been following the music sheet scene ever since they released 2 or 3 years ago. I can't even remember at this point. And there's a few music sheets that are very rare and worth noting. The first one is Canarios. This is the rarest music sheet in the game, and it's only obtained in Cannery Mines in Everfall, and I'll talk more about that. But the price range for this will vary dependent on the server, as well as a lot of the stuff that I'll be talking about. So bear in mind, I play on Eldorado, which is a pretty dead server. Realistically, the prices will be similar, but they won't be exactly the same. And when I'm playing on a dead server, especially a legacy server, a lot of these prices might be inflated. If you're playing on, say, a fresh start server, it might be a lot less, for example. But in this case, Canarios had a buy order for 120k not even a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. So someone was buying this for 120k, and I was out there trying to farm for it. I never ended up getting it, but this is a very decent money-making method if you're willing to put in the time to farm for it. But there is another way to play the music sheet market without farming. Before I get into that, let's talk about where you actually get the music sheet, which is right here at Cannery Mine, right next to the Shadow Mine Shrine. So you're going to go here. There's 3 chests here, one here, one here, and one here. You can pick up. You have technically a better chance at getting the music sheet from the chests, but you can only get the music sheet you only have a chance to get the music sheet once an hour from the chest, because that is the respawn timer on the chest. But you could realistically kill the enemies there for however long you want, and you have a chance to get it. But of course, given the fact that this is so expensive, it is very, very, very hard to get, extremely rare. The drop rate is extremely low, so you could spend hundreds of hours here without even getting the music sheet. But if you do get it, you'll be able to sell it for, on my server specifically, around 80 to 150k, depending on the buyer. So yeah, I mean, that is a decent option. Now, on the same line of music sheets, you can also do Young King Stanley Page 2. So this is another rare music sheet. This one will sell for usually around 5k on the very low end to 20k on the high end. But the good thing about this specific music sheet, as well as a few others I'll be talking about, is that you can actually get this music sheet from another method other than farming for it. And that method is aptitude crates. So music aptitude crates, you can actually get this music sheet from. And it looks like there's none on the market apart from mine, which is the mandolin. I used to actually have like 6 mandolins, 5 guitars, 2 bass, all of Young King Stanley Page 2. And I've been slowly selling those over the course of the last, I don't know, maybe 6 months. Every week or so, I'll see if I have one available, I'll list it, and then if it sells, it sells. I usually can get around 10k for it on average. So how did I get that? Well, if you have a bunch of music sheets that are not rare, so this is my music sheet storage chest, basically, you can actually convert this into raw music XP, and that will allow you to actually get music aptitude crates. So in fact, let's just do a little test run of that. We'll go to Eden Grove and we'll do some conversions. So the best music sheets to get from the music aptitude crates are going to be Young King Stanley Page 2, Soul Warden's Journey, and what was the last one called? I'll have to check on the last one. I forget the name of it. But yeah, there's 3 that you're really looking to get. And then basically, if you get Soul Wardens or the other one that I can't think of, you're looking at roughly 15 to 50k, depending on the server, like I said. And then Young King Stanley Page 2 is 10k on average, but you could probably get more for that if the buyer is wanting to buy it. But let's look what that other music sheet was called, because I forgot. Heart Gems Burden, that's the one. So yeah, Heart Gems Burden, Soul Wardens, or Young King Stanley Page 2 are the 3 that you're looking for. So we're gonna go ahead and see if we can get an aptitude crate just to demonstrate this real quick. I think it's engineering is where you do it. Yeah, it's called Musicians Research Project here. You can actually take bigger stacks than 100. So if I were to have more than 100, it would allow me to put, yeah, like I said, more than 100 in. But for me, it's just a bunch of random ones. So this is a very tedious process, by the way. So I recommend, if you wanted to do it this way, you say in chat that you're looking to buy music sheets for a certain price. For me, I used to be buying these at 4 gold each, and then I would just do this exact thing, run it through the machine, yada yada yada, and see if I get lucky. So here's one. Let's see, we got nothing, but you have a chance to get a music sheet, and you also have another chance to get a rare music sheet. So that is money-making method number 1, which is rare music sheets. The second money-making method is going to be trade skills. Now, there's a few ways that you can make gold from trade skills. The first way is trophies, which I also have a separate section on, but that relies on actually playing the market when it comes to it. But a lot of other things come down to rare craft mods like heavy metal conglomerates, soul heart alternators, and a new one, which I don't think a lot of people realize is rare, but it is rare, it's just not as expensive, which is Vampiric Essence. These are actually as rare as soul hearts and heavy metals, but they don't sell as much because they aren't as viable. In my opinion, I think this is a very strong perk regardless, because it is anointed lifesteal. It gives you increased lifesteals, so it's actually very strong for not only tanks but also DPS. So even for me, I run this on my Attuned Leather Pants because, in my opinion, having extra lifesteal is better than having health on Attuned Leather Pants. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents on it. I think that specific perk is pretty lucrative, especially if you are on a server where, let's say, you look at the price and you see that they're listed for like 2 to 5k. I would consider buying it because they're probably worth more. So how do you actually get those items then? Well, you have to level up your trade skills to get aptitude crates, and then a good way to get aptitude crates is from the infused scraps. So you can do infused armor fragments, infused weapon fragments, and all that. It's usually just weapon and armor that you're looking at, because those are the main ones where you can get the rare craft mods. And then, you know, it is gamble still, because of course you're basically hoping that you get something good from it, but you're not guaranteed. So you could theoretically lose money, but if you price it well, you can level it out so that you know, even if you lose some money on some rolls, you're eventually going to make profit in the long run. So it's just a matter of finding what that value is to determine what it's worth buying for, essentially. And then I didn't realize I was still in queue there. Another thing that you can get from aptitude crates is the crafting armor. So that would be like armorer's shirt, for example. You can get this from armoring aptitude crates, of course, and you can sell this for a decent amount. I've actually sold this a couple times now in the past week. So I sold one for 10k, one for 10k, one for 6k, one for 6.5k. This was the armor gloves. So yeah, you can sell these for a decent amount, but of course you're gonna have to just get aptitude crates. But the good thing is, especially with armoring, I really like leveling armoring because you have a chance to get a lot of decent stuff. So first off, you'll get prismatics. These can be resold for a decent amount. You have a chance to get the armoring clothing, which you can sell for 10k or so at minimum. Usually you could probably even get more, at least on my server. And then of course you have like the big boys, soul heart, alternators, and vampiric essence. You can see I actually sold 3 vampiric essence for 20k each, which was 60k right there. So they do sell. I think vampiric essence are definitely worth noting in that regard. All right, so that is money-making tip number 2, which is trade skills. The third money-making tip is not necessarily an individual item, but more of a broad construct, or concept rather. And that is investing in items before a patch. This is how I made most of my gold. I had a comment on one of my previous videos asking, how did I make 4 million gold? And the way I did that is by investing in items before a patch. This used to be a lot easier when the game's economy was a lot more robust, where you had a lot more players engaging in the economy. So you were able to make gold a lot easier just by listing something on the market. It would probably sell. Nowadays, especially on Eldorado, there's not as many people playing. So it makes it harder for your investments to come to fruition, especially on larger investments where you're investing hundreds of thousands of gold sometimes. You're not usually able to offload that in a realistic time. But there are a lot of ways that you can make that happen. So one idea that I did, this was one that I had a ton of success on, was Gorgon's Eyes. So these used to be worth, I don't know, like 500 gold, 500 to 1,000 gold, I think, on Eldorado. Maybe even cheaper. I can't even remember at this point. This was when they, people didn't realize the value of these, because no one had the schematics for the, I can't remember the name, but you basically use these Gorgon Eyes to craft the 725 gear, and you need to use them. And back in the day, the drop rate for the schematics were very, very low. It was like 1 in 100. And I had the thought that they'll probably make it easier to get the schematics, or at the very least, they would introduce more schematics. So I basically just invested probably like 400k gold into Gorgon Eyes. And then after that update hit, the Gorgon Eye price spiked through the roof, and I was able to sell pretty much all of these at 1.5 to 2k gold. So I made roughly 3x my money on that just in the course of a couple months, which is pretty insane. So that is the third tip, which is investments, and that can come in the form of a lot of different things. Gorgon Eyes was one that I did. Another one that I did was Human Idols. I used to trade these. This is not much of an investment, but more of something like trading it every day. So what I would do is, I guess I'll just talk more generally here. The way I like to play a market is you want to look for an item that has low supply and low demand, but also could theoretically have a lot of demand. And the one item that I came to realize was that Human Idols had a pretty low supply, but people were selling them, listing them on the market. And I knew that this item was used to make the human trophies. So I would basically just put in a buy order for 15k, or like 10 to 15k realistically, and then the next day it would be filled. I would relist it for 20 to 40k, and it would get filled, and I would just repeat that process, doubling my money every single time I went through that process. And I would do it multiple times, so it really was a really strong way to make gold. Now that's not necessarily investment, but it is another way to think about making gold on the trade post. And that leads us to our fourth tip, which is the trophy market. And like I mentioned before, human idols, that is a way to do it. But you have many other options when it comes to trophies. So, you know, you don't even have to trade the components necessarily. You could trade like Angry Earth trophies. Wow, there's actually none on the market. But something like this, you know, if you see something like this where there's low supply, not much demand, try to figure out how do you play this market. That's what you want to think about. How do you play this market? Put in a few buy orders. Make a buy order for like, I don't know, 5K. When it gets filled, relist it. Put in a sell order. And just play that process. Even if it doesn't get filled, figure out what's the price that it should be filled at. A lot of this stuff is general basic stuff where, you know, if you've played the market, not just in New World, but in general, you should understand that. But yeah, that is our fourth tip, which is the trophy market. Very lucrative, but it requires some knowledge on how to play it. So I would recommend spend a week looking at those prices. If you're actually serious about making money on this, spend a week, not even trading it, just looking at the prices. See how the prices change throughout that week. And then after that week, put in a few buy orders and try to start playing it from there. All right, now on to our fifth and final tip, which is basically just going to be flipping liquid items. So that's going to come down to prismatics for the most part. Prismatic ingots, prismatic cloth, prismatic leather. You're going to notice that a lot of these items usually have a tight spread. I guess for this, it's not actually that tight of a spread, but usually it is going to be a pretty tight spread, which makes it pretty difficult to play the market on this. So same tip applies as I just said before. Spend about a week, look at the prices of this, see how they change throughout that week, and then after that week, start seeing what is a good time to buy, where is a good time to sell, and just do that throughout the week. And then not only will you start making money, but you can also just do other things too. Like you can start adding other ways to make gold. So you could do, you know, the prismatic market, you could buy and sell that, but also at the same time, you're selling trophies and you're also doing music sheets. And maybe you found a random item that has low supply and low demand, but something that should have demand, and you start playing that item. So it's going to come down to just getting a feel for the market and find a niche. That's my biggest tip. This isn't listed anywhere on my top 5 here, but try to find a niche item that you think should have demand but doesn't, or maybe people haven't realized it, and then just try to play that market. Anyways, that is my top 5 tips. Hopefully you enjoyed. Even if you have a lot of knowledge on trading the market, maybe you found something useful here. And yeah, that is about it for the video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.